Savvy Chapter 33. Once I'd begun to cry, sitting on the floor of that dim living room, still 60 miles from Salina Hope Hospital and Papa and Mama and Rocket, I couldn't stop. It wasn't pretty delicate crying either. It was full-on snot dripping, chest wheezing, jibber-jabber wailing. Will stepped away from his daddy to kneel down and take my hand in his. Samson leaned up against me. The child welfare caseworker walked over to the bathroom and retrieved a box of tissues, but every time I pulled one from the box, smelled of mothballs and Carlene, which made me cry all the harder. You must be Mississippi Beaumont, said Bill gently. She likes to be called Mibs, Dad, Will asserted, coming to my rescue. Bill pulled a chair over by me and sat on its edge. Is that right, Mibs? He asked. I gave a big sobbing nod, trying to calm myself down so as not to give the very worst possible first impression. I noticed Bill looking at Will's hand on mine, and for a minute Officer Meeks looked done in and young as young. You've been through a lot these last few days, Bill said gently, making me want to bawl even more. I know your dad's over there in the hospital in Salina, and I know you probably just wanted to go find him, right? Another big sobbing nod. Then maybe we should do just that. Everyone looked up at Bill Meeks as though wondering if they'd heard him right. Even the caseworker looked startled. Officer, you can't, the caseworker started saying, but stopped as Bill looked up at her firmly. Bill asked the caseworker to give us a little room to talk. He wanted to hear our whole story from top to bottom firsthand. We all joined in on the telling as the caseworker took a seat along the wall. Bill listened keenly and without interrupting, occasionally running his hand across his razor-short hair. When we'd finished our tale, Bill sat there for a time without saying anything. Is our papa okay? A small voice fell like a pebble into the stillness, rippling the tension in the air like deep water. With Samson's hodgepodge of thoughts already streaming incoherently through my brain, it took me a moment to realize that he had spoken aloud. I tried to swallow, but found my throat was too rough and too tight as I waited for the man's answer. Officer Meeks shook his head. I haven't heard anything recent about your dad, but I'll see what I can find out. I need to talk to some people here and figure out what's going to happen next. You kids wait here. I'll be back in a few minutes. He stepped away to converse with the officers outside. As I watched him go, I couldn't help but wonder if Bill's hair grew out curly like his son's, and the last of my tears dripped off my chin, leaving me red-eyed and headachy. I could see Bill talking to Lester, talking to Lil, and then talking to Carlene. I could hear a clock ticking slowly somewhere in the kitchen, like its battery was running low, or like it too was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen. After finishing with Carlene, then speaking with several other officers, Bill spent a long time on a cell phone before coming back into the trailer with a stiff-necked, hard-shelled look about him. He didn't sit back down in the chair, but stood over us instead, looking lawful and steady in his crisp uniform with his badge and his gun and his trooper face on. He spoke first to me and Fish and Samson, his words sounding practiced and formal, yet his tone was round-cornered and kind. I'm very sorry to tell you that your father's condition hasn't improved. He needs his family around him now. It's important that we get you down to Salina soon. Fish slid off the couch to sit on the floor on the other side of Samson. We have to be strong for Papa now, he said, putting one arm around our little brother and squeezing my shoulder once as he did. As worn out as Fish was, only the faintest of breezes blew through the room, and since the door to the trailer was still smashed in, nobody took much notice of a little bit of wind. Samson merely nodded silently, but his overlapping voice in my head grew busier and less musical, like a flock of nervous geese. I still couldn't make out one thought from another. Loud as he was thinking, my littlest brother's innermost self was still a mystery, even to my savvy self. Bill Meeks paused before continuing. When he did speak again, it was to all five of us. You kids have caused more than a little trouble in the last 24 hours. A lot of people spent a great deal of time and energy looking for you, and you gave your families a huge scare. Bill looked at us long and hard until we all felt ready to crawl beneath the trailer and stay there. Then he took a deep breath through his nose and smiled sympathetically, giving Will a quick conspirational wink before continuing on in a lower voice, glancing at the caseworker sitting along the wall. I know how easy it is to make wrong choices and end up in difficult situations, but things don't always turn out badly. There will be consequences, of course, but no one got hurt and no hurt was met. So as far as I know, no one's pressing any charges against those folks out there. Mr. Swan and Miss Kitely may have some ill-advised decisions, but they did do a good job of looking after you and keeping you all safe. Lester and Lil aren't going to go to jail, I said, looking up at Will's dad. No, Mibs, they're not going to jail. Bill's smile widened. In fact, I kind of need their help right now. You do, said Bobby. Well, I need someone to drive you all over to Salina, don't I? It would be a tight fit in the patrol car, and it seems Lester and Lil would really like to see you get there. I was flooded with such relief that I almost started crying again. Lester and Lil were going to be safe, and I would soon be with my family. I wanted to thank Bill Meeks from the bottom of my mush and muscle heart, but I could find no words. For the first time, I wished that my savvy worked in reverse. I wished that all I had to do was draw a smiley face somewhere on my skin so that others might know how I was feeling without me having to say a thing. But from the way Bill was looking at me, I had the feeling he knew anyway. The child welfare caseworker, still not entirely certain Bill's plane was sound, insisted on riding along with us on the big pink Bible bus and requested that an armed officer be aboard as well. While Lester welcomed us kid back onto his bus without a grudge, the idea of having the extra official passengers on board made him fidget. It will be okay, Lester, Lil soothed. I'll stay by you in the front seat. We can talk about your next delivery if you'd like. Maybe we can even talk about starting up your very own Bible-selling business. My own business, Lil? Lester said in surprise, now clearly distracted from the fact that there was a police officer climbing onto his bus. Why, sure, Lester, she said. I know you've got it in you. What took you so long to come into my life, Lil? Lester said with a sigh, shaking his head and staring at his feet. I wish I could have met you years ago. I'm always late, Lester, Lil laughed. It's just a talent I can't escape. I watched Lil calm Lester's worries and thought about how good and kind she was and about all the trouble I'd caused her. But while Lil didn't seem to hold our deception at the motel against us, she did want to know how we managed it. You kids are too smart for your own good, Lil said after we'd said our sorries and explained how we'd faked the call to Miss Rosemary. Lil hugged each of us to her in her turn. The world had better watch out for all of you. You're big trouble in the making. Bill was going to drive ahead of the Heartland Bible supply bus as an escort all the way to Salina, and he asked Will if he wanted to ride along. Poor Will contemplated the patrol car, looking torn in two. I imagined that he'd love nothing more than to ride up front of that car with his daddy, like he was a state trooper himself. But then Will glanced at me. Next time, he said to his dad with a sheepish grin. Go on with your friends, laughed Bill, rumpling Will Jr.'s hair, then pulling him toward him for another back-thumping hug. I guess you've been missing your papa too, I said to Will as we got settled. He shrugged and squeezed my hand tight. Things don't always happen the way you want them to, Mibs, he said. I thought about that, and I thought about my own papa in the hospital. I thought about the way my savvy hadn't worked out in the way I'd hoped, or how our journey to Salina had taken its own twists and turns. Then I remembered what Lil had said just before falling asleep in the motel the night before. You never can tell when a bad thing might make a good thing happen. I realized that good and bad were always there and always mixed up together in a tangle, though at the moment I wasn't sure that made me feel any better.